Egypt by the Greeks. I want to have you just give yourselves a hand clap for coming out, and I especially want to give a double hand clap for these two sisters who, as steadfast initiates, were right here in the front row on time, and that's the key, to be in our appointed place at the appointed time. There's so much that I could talk with you about today, and I've been cautioned to go easy on you. And we'll see why. It's deep, but we need to get deep to get out of the situation we're in. I want to start out by saying I come to you today as a metaphysician and a chemetician. Do you remember the days when the Surgeon General would come before you? Remember the see every coup days when the Surgeon General would come before you and sound a health alert? You remember those days? How many remember when the Surgeon General would come before you and sound a health alert? You know, tell you cancer, cigarettes have been proven to cause cancer and so forth and so on. Well, in that same spirit, I'm coming before you as a metaphysician to sound a psychological and spiritual alert. That's right, a psychological and spiritual alert. And today, I'll be talking about African cosmology of Kemet and the higher spiritual meaning of the N-word. But we have much to learn before we can even appreciate the highest spiritual meaning of the N-word. So a lot of today is going to be preparation for that. You see, recently the NAACP, how many remember that recently the NAACP had a ritualistic and ceremonial burial of the N-word, right? It's supposed to be the end of the story, to bury this word that folks have killed us, and you know, it's the word that heralds the oncoming of destruction and insult and violence and death. It's also the same name in which black youth both greet and kill each other. So this ceremonial ritualistic burial was an important step. However, we have to be very skillful in the management of this word, because it's about a vibration. And so I'll be talking with you about that vibration, because a word can be used to vibrate on a higher spiritual level. When these words vibrate on a higher spiritual level, what we built in greatness. And as that word went out of Africa, because we are millions of years old, as an African people, we are millions of years old. We are the mothers and fathers of civilization. The mothers and fathers of civilization. And our language is called Medew Netcher. And this would later be called, what by the Greeks? What did the Greeks later call it?
Hieroglyphics.
Hieroglyphics, good. We've got some knowledgeable folks, good. All right, so as Medew Netcher, just as Africans made their outgoing footsteps out of Africa and populated the world, so too did Medew Netcher make its journey out of Africa. And as it did so, it became distillated through English. And with this cycle of time, this lowering of the vibration over cycles of time, we see and need to retrace this journey. All right? So we're going to talk about that today. But there's a lot of preparation we need to do before we're ready to really understand the higher spiritual meaning of the N-word. But I want to say at the outset, if you take a diamond and you put it in a dumpster and you put tons and tons of garbage on top of it, guess what? It's still a diamond. And when you ferret it out and clean it up, its shine will still be luminous. This is the process. And we didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to see all of the way today. But we're going to point out the important footsteps. And this is a path, and I want to get deep with, not everybody's going to take this trip. And you see, many didn't even walk in this door today. As the sister said, thank you, Elder. This room should be back to the wall with folks. But I want to take some who want to go even deeper, and I want to download this information to you rapidly so the youth can take it on the ground. Because the youth have the medium, they have the rhythm, they just need to get the message right. And it'll run like fire, and we will lift overnight because our babies really know how to do it. They got the technology and they got the medium, they just need the vibration, and they need to get the message right. And that's what we need to do as elders who are getting a little more elderly every day. With our last breath, we need to help our youth and not be afraid of death. See, a lot of folks who didn't come in this door are too worried about dying. We are focusing on living. Okay, so now, as I said, I was cautioned not to hit you with a whole lot because, and one of the things we learn as metaphysicians and chemeticians, nothing is over our heads, okay? So if you hear something today, don't say, oh, it's over my head, I'm gonna stop attending to what's being said. Just suspend it over here. We say, as a metaphysician, suspend, suspend, suspend until we can append. In other words, if you don't know exactly where it goes, just hold it right there and then come back. And you'll see, you'll just keep going and you'll walk into the moment where greater clarity is derived. Okay. Now, I have 1,000 slides I could show you, so I have to be very skillful in what we do with the small co-measure of time that we have in this space. Every space is a time-space continuum that we, by law, are commanded to use well. So that's my task today, to be as expedient with this downloading as possible. So we've gone over some of what we do in our academy. Okay, let me just, so one of the things is that we must, in this process of reclamation, there's certain impediments we must overcome, and we have to start now right in this room, okay? One of the major impediments is not knowing our history, not taking responsibility for knowing, seeking, finding, and being all spooked up. Too many folks are all spooked up. And, I'm sorry, he's telling me I need to move. You all help me out if I stand in the way. Yeah. What we need to know is that we're millions of years old as an African people, and that the world has generously borrowed from all our wisdom. And in the words of George James, he who just plain said stolen. Everything is a recapitulation or a redispensation, or as it were, a repackaging of what's already gone before. There is nothing new under the sun. There's nothing that's going on today that our ancestors didn't know about, and did it even better. So we have to know our history. We have to know that, first of all, we had a psychology and a spirituality long before modern religion. We're older than Christianity. We're older than Islam. We're older than Buddhism. We're older. We had religion, we had spiritual practices, but we didn't call them religion. We are spiritual beings, and it goes back to nature. Our African ancestors, nature was their book. The sky was their book. All of their symbols, their language, the Medew Netcher come out of the symbols of nature all around them. As in a minute you'll see that Neter itself means nature. So they studied nature to just know about the world around them. The sky, they charted the stars, 2 precessional cycles, which is in excess of 56,000 years. So the sky was their storybook. They charted the stars, all right? Now, so we had this psychological and spiritual practice long before religion, long before Western psychology. Our African ancestors were masters in the science of the soul and the journey of the soul. And they helped us to understand what they call the Neter or the Neteru. And this meant qualities of God, qualities of divinity. Now, let me just flip here. And you're going to see me just flip around here. So that's what I'm going to do, because I know what I'm looking for. Our ancestors understood that there were 7 divisions of the spirit, or 7 planes of consciousness, and they gave them names. Now, this is one of the things that we have to overcome right here in this room, is that, first of all, you have that physical body, and that's the most densest plane. It's made of a dense substance. But when you go to the gym, how many been to the gym recently? Okay. When you go to the gym, especially if you haven't gone in a while, you know when you start working that denseness, and y'all don't have to take all these voluminous notes. My books are back there. It's got all these diagrams in it, okay? So that would be the way to go, to just support the Academy by buying our books. Everything I show you is in the book. So when you go to the gym, you're working this substance, this dense physical substance, and you know if you haven't been to the gym and you work it, it gets sore, right? Okay, all right. Moving up a plane, we come into a substance that's more refined than the substance below, more subtle substance, the emotional plane. And you know that if, as a community, if you're grieving, you got to work through that substance called grief. You got to work through, you work with the substance of anger. Isn't that tough substance you work through? Or fear? Okay, you got to work with that until you transmute it into something more useful, something that can be more comfortable. All right. Now, let's go up another plane, to the mental plane. Now, we know that the substance of the mental plane is even more refined than the substance of the emotional and physical plane. This is the plane that we have to work hard. We're not ready to understand the highest spiritual meaning of the N-word. See, because some folks just in our work in trying to get the physical together. So you got to, in terms of what we eat, in terms of our health, okay, we can hardly get to these other planes and really work the substance of these planes until we've really gotten our rest of our house in order. This is what building the lighted temple is about. It's about building a lighted temple. And you know, just like, you know, we can get a little overweight because we haven't worked the physical stuff enough, we can get a little flabby mentally. Well, we're mentally flabby. The first time you start to hit folks with soft stuff, that's why they're not in this room. You know, and lots of folks just want to go to church because they want to stay in that emotional and physical plane. They want to do that emotional thing, work that emotional substance, and then leave, and they ain't used that mind at all. You don't have to think. Somebody's thinking for you. You're not taking responsibility. Okay? And somebody's thinking for you. All right? But you come study in the academy, you're going to be put to work, and we're going to work that, you know, like that dough, that we're going to work it, and we're going to work it until it's luminous. Folks in our classes will tell you sometimes they leave and sometimes they got a headache all right? I don't want anybody in this room to say they got a headache. Oh, it's over my head, I got a headache. You know, oh, I'm sore, you know? Get over it. Our ancestors were deep. We're deep. You can't even, we would be here a week just to unpack this one symbol, Ankh. If we tried to click on this like you take your mouse and click on the windows, whole documents will open up. We'd be here a week just trying to penetrate these documents. We got to get back to black. We got to get back to what our African ancestors have given us. But you can see, we've just covered 3 planes, and what did our African ancestors do? They gave us 4 more. What does modern psychology leave you at? It leaves you on the mental plane, and it hardly wants you to go there. It's like it wants to keep you with, oh, how do you feel? We're upset about our condition, all right? How many times we have to say that? Our day of crying and weeping is over. Our ancestors have soaked this earth with our blood, their sweat, and their tears. We got to get out of that emotional thing and get up above the diaphragm. These planes that I'm talking about are below the diaphragm. We haven't even, so we want to talk a little bit about the first eye, but we can't get in the first eye down here. We have to rise our consciousness through our practice of meditation, you know, stillness. We have to move within the first eye because we're not ready to understand the N word, the highest spiritual meaning of the N word, until we get the first eye working. Okay, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. All right, now, so next, Spirit moved me to go here. As I said, before the Trinity of Christianity, we had a Trinity, which we called Asur, Aset, and Heru. Here's the Trinity right here. Folks familiar with Asur, Aset, and Heru?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I keep getting in the way. Okay, all right, thanks. Just keep reminding me that I'm in the way. All right. And for those who don't know the story of Asur and Aset and Heru, it's a long story, but it's our story. I'm going to give you just 4 highlights. I want you all to make a commitment to learn the rest of the story because it informs where we're going, where we came, and what we need to do. In the story of Asur and Aset, Asur and Aset harmoniously rule their kingdom as king and queen because that's where we're going in our highest spiritual meaning of the N-word. We're going back to the throne as kings and queens, okay? And Heru is the son of Asur and Aset. But Asur is slain by his jealous brother, Set. And a fierce battle ensues between Heru and Set, in which Heru must avenge his father's death and be restored as the rightful heir to the throne. So this symbolizes the reestablishment of the kingdom of God on earth. That is our work. That is where we are going when we understand the highest spiritual meaning of the N-word. We're going back to our rightful place on the throne. And this battle, is this battle between Heru and Set waging now? Yeah. Very powerfully, very powerfully. It's the fiercest battle of all. Okay. So now we're going to the next impediment, okay? And the next impediment is not understanding what time it is. Why is that? Because we've been told not to be tellers of time. Where'd that come from? Community, where'd that come from? Deuteronomy, that's right. But you think other people know how to tell time? Huh? Other people are learning and knowing how to tell time. Okay, so we've been told not to be tellers of time. Let's see where this is. Okay. All right. But before we can learn about time, we have to understand one of the Kemetic laws. As there are many Kemetic laws, universal law. And this is the law of vibration. And the law, the Kemetic law is this, that all is spirit. All is spirit. And that spirit is matter at its lowest level of vibration, and matter is spirit at its highest level of vibration. So it's about a continuum. It's about a continuum. So that's one thing we have to understand in order to understand the highest spiritual meaning of the N-word. We have to understand the law of vibration. That we may be in a cycle of time where things are vibrating at a higher spiritual level, and we may be at a cycle of time when they are vibrating at a lower level, okay? All right, now, here is exactly what I mean. We want to understand what time it is. What time is it? What time is it? We lived at a time when the earth was spiritual and more ethereal. And with the descent down the tree of life, the lowering of the vibration on this planet, we begin to make our descent from a more spiritual state in consciousness to a material state in consciousness, which is where we are now. In other words, you want to, in order to understand the high spiritual meaning of the N-word, you want to appreciate what time we incarnated in. What, are you taping, hon? Because I'd ask you not to tape, because, yeah, because we do want to, sorry. Okay, all right. We do want to understand what time we have incarnated in. This is important for you because you want to know, why would you choose this time to come, to be on Earth? We have incarnated at a point where we are at the greatest materialization in consciousness. We lived in times when we were in the highest spiritualization of consciousness, okay? In other words, our ancestors lived in the light of day, in the most highest spiritual time, and they watched the shade go down. And what happened in that darkness? Awful atrocities have happened on our planet in that darkness. But we are the same ancestors, you, me, incarnating now, who are now what? Watching the shade go up. And we're now seeing the shards of light. You change the thing. The shards of light coming through. Just the hint of it. Where's the shards of light? In other words, where is humanity today? Present day humanity. We're right here, in the vertex of the V. All right? In other words, we made our greatest descent down the tree of life from the time when our earth was most spiritual. We lived in a, you know, the golden ages where, you know, without war, without lack, without disease. And now we have made our descent down into this present day despiritualization in consciousness, where consciousness has become the most material and the most dense. And now we are in this arduous uphill climb. You see that notch right there? We're in this arduous uphill climb in our re-spiritualization. That's the time that you came, okay? So you know your work is hard. This is not for the faint and weary. This time time that we're living in, because we're going to see some stuff, this time is not for the faint or the weary. So you have to ask your soul why you chose to come at this time, and be on your soul program to do what it is you have come to do with all your heart and all your might. But, so what's happening now is the spiritual forces are clashing, the material forces are clashing and contending with the spiritual forces, because our planet is now being bathed in these higher spiritual energies. And they have to do with cycles of time that we could go into if we had enough time, but there's the changing of the ages, there's the changing of the pole star, there's the changing from the moon cycle to the sun cycle, and so on and so on and so on. There's the change, the Mayan calendar is up, and there's the harmonic convergence, and all things say what? They say the same thing, time's up. We're turning it around. And if you heard the song in the opening, you see that we are in this turning point. But what's happening in this turning point is the material forces are contending with the spiritual energies, the spiritual forces. And and even though a death blow has been dealt to this, what I call this dragon, this fire-breathing dragon, there's a death blow that has been dealt, and he's now writhing because he has been hit a death blow. However, he is the most dangerous at that time, because you got to watch for that tail that'll come around and whip around and take so many folks out with it. So this time is both propitious. Okay, it's first of all perilous and propitious. It's the most dangerous time for the reasons I've just said, and it's also propitious because it is the time for those who have incarnated and they know why they're here, and they know what gifts they have come and what they are called to do. It's the most propitious time for them to put into order now that which they have been called to do. They're empowered. The ancestors demand that you rise and you do what you have been called to do. Let's see, probably shouldn't move it because, yeah. Can you do it? Okay. Get a little technical assistance here. I think that is better. That is better. That is better. How you doing? Following? Yeah. All right. Okay, well, should we ask a question? Is anybody, or we just want to keep going? Because I want to say, fasten your seatbelts. All right? Fasten your seatbelts. Okay, we doing all right? We need to stop and ask a question? We need to catch our breath? Okay, anybody got a headache? No. Okay, you're bearing it. All right, we're working that mental substance, and we're going to work it some more. All right. So both perilous and propitious. Now, so we couldn't understand what time it is, you see, because one of the things we want to appreciate is that vertex in that V, that descent, there are cycles of time on Earth where that descent isn't but so low. And then there are times where that descent is even deeper. Guess what? What would you assess is the status of our Earth, our planet, in terms of, are we in a vertex of a V that's on a slightly less, more spiritual end, or more, you remember the law of vibration, spirit, and then we, you know, where do you think we are?
We're descending, recessing.
We're way down, we're in a planetary cycle now where we have really hit bottom. You came when we hit bottom. Can't understand the highest spiritual meaning of the N-word unless you know what time it is. can't understand what time it is unless you know something about the law of vibration. All right, now, so, now, the next thing we have to do